and it really helps if I unmute my mic. Sorry about that. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy midweek. Happy hump day. Happy whatever you call Wednesday. All right. Special show this week. As you know, we periodically have guests on here, and this gentleman is no stranger to our little family. He's, certainly a notable toy collector with a lot of life experience. We've helped him out raising some money in the past, but we don't have any of those agendas today. All we want to do is sit and have a chat with the man you know and love, Masters Maniac Mexico, also known as Rollo. Welcome to the show.
Hello, guys, and first of all, let me thank you heartily, Jim, for considering me interview Versi on your toy universe.
Oh, it was always going to happen. It was something where people get to know you in bits and pieces through the the benefit stream and the auctions, and certainly those of the family that are over on Bill's channel and so forth. You get to know you in bits and pieces, but I wanted to make sure that we had a means to just have a polite conversation. There's a lot that I know, but
There you
there's
go,
probably some things.
and go free from the lever, as we say in Germany. So you're pretty much free to ask anything, and the same I would love to send out to the people that are participating here or that are coming in lately. Um, Please, whatever you want to know, whatever question you have, I'm here to talk to you and to answer.
Absolutely. And speaking of chat, we've got Bjorn Jorgensen, Jim Largo, Bill from Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures, Jason Garcia, Gojatron, Bereli, all hanging out, and some other folks that haven't chatted just yet. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Daniel Carhoonan as well. So, as with all things, I think it's fair that we start at the beginning. I know a lot about your past, but something I haven't heard you talk a lot about of specifically is your first memories of toys. What is your first memory of going into a store, picking out a toy,
Right.
and coming home with it?
Oh yeah, there I have to correct you straight away, my friend, because it wasn't a store. My first active remembrance on buying a toy actively, I also consider to be the beginning of my collector's human being, I say, because I happened to be on a flea market. I was 7 years old, and I was selling there together with my greater cousin, and it was one of this local festivity in a garden. What you want to say? Something charity and fun, and also little kids and family orientated, and we sold our stuff there. And next to my stand, there was a girl selling a lot stuff, and there was a lot of action figures. Captain Future, Masters of the Universe. Captain Future is nothing that you're very attached to, but the Germans, yes. Masters of the Universe and stuff like that. And during the day, more and more selling. I was with every buck I earned, I went over to that stand to buy a piece of the things she had. And
Nice.
and what makes me saying that I became a collector this day was there was a last piece. She had the Captain Future Comet, which is the space carrier of Captain Future and his band, if you want to say like this. And there is like a five figures display with all of the main characters like Greg, Otto, and I don't know what in it. And she had that as well. I bought the comet, but I didn't had enough money earned during the day to buy this five figure set. So I went off running through the whole colony, searching for any relative or well known person that would be able to give or borrow me that money. I finally managed that. And as a 7 years old, I ran back to the stand to concede this toy. So I say and I claim that this was the beginning of the disease.
You even
I
answered
came
my
back for it.
follow up question.
Okay? Yeah.
Yeah, my follow-up question was going to be, of all the toys you bought that day, what one stood out? Obviously, it was the Captain Future set. Um, so from there, you continue to buy toys. Clearly, that's a really young age to be buying toys with your own money, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, so
But
it's
a
something
pretty
that
German attitude, you have to say that. So it's my grandfather has been a typical Prussian guy, and he has told me to work with what I have from very early on. For example, I can tell you, my grandfather was giving me a hammer to my birthday in my hands every year. And he started that with my first birthday, as they told me. And when I was 5, I was ready to hold it. I was able to hold it. It was not falling down. I was claiming it. And he said, okay, he's ready to work. And from this from this moment on, he took me to everything. And this is another aspect. No, you work for your money, you earn your money, and then you get to spend it. And for what you get to spend it, he also told.
it's a great philosophy, and it certainly applies to some other things. We're going to kind of jump around a little bit. Um, at some point, and I've never heard this story myself, but I'm curious. At what point did you start? When did you decide you wanted to start making toys or modifying toys? What was it? Did you start with
Oh,
customs? How did that begin? At what point in your life did that become something you were interested in?
yeah, that all happened here in Mexico. So very much later
Okay.
in my life, because I first of all I never considered to have myself such abilities, till I found out that doing things and repeating things is really the only talent that you need. And if you have a strong will for that, things are approaching, and things are advancing as well. And saying this, Mexico itself is a very creative country. There's a lot of handcraft going on everywhere, still a lot of artwork, also music every day in the streets or whatever. So it is a creative uh, ambition, if you want to say like this. You have a creative sphere here. And through the collectionism, I got to know some people that are for their whole life or for whole their professional life in creating toys, in designing toys and bringing them to the market. And I hooked up with these guys, and there we go. And since then, I'm advancing, or before I got too bad, I was advancing as well in my YouTube channel in front of your eyes. So there's no magic or anything that happened. It was a very long progress, and here we go with what I can do today.
Fair enough. So now we're going to rewind a little bit. I think that just about anyone who's seen you on any of the live streams we've shared in the past knows that you're a motorbike enthusiast, cycling and
Yeah.
clubs, things like that. We know that part, and we'll get to some of that in a bit. Um, but something that most people may not know about you, and one of the things that fascinate me the most, is the fact that you are a licensed medical doctor.
Yeah, that's true.
W- When, like, from the days of being at a boot sale, buying Captain Future, what led you to deciding you wanted to pursue medicine? And tell us something about medical school and what that's meant to you.
So just to make this thing logically clear, I never stopped to be a toy lover or toy collector. Never. Maybe there was 2 or 3 years when uh, hormones are playing so wild that you're not too much focused on it. But I never literally let it down, neither the hunting on flea markets. So this is something, my collectionism, that stands above everything that you just touched. And there's another thing that people need to understand, or two little things. First thing is, I have become a member of a infamous motorcycle club even before I started to study. I still was at graduation school. In Germany, we have a little bit different of a system. You, I think, would call it college, no, or high school.
Mhm.
I don't know. Where you
So,
finish to go to the university. Next step would be
yeah, so
university.
the last 4
So
years, we call that high
things came
school,
up,
yeah.
and the second thing that you need to know is that I myself would never have applied for medical studies as a person. It was more that I have a family history with mats in my family. My father himself was a mat. He got sick like me very early in his life, and he died very early in his life. And he had a running private consultory where all the people that I grew up with, including my mother, were working at the time. And I considered it to be my responsibility, as I knew I had the abilities, brain wise, let's say, so that the capacity would be the better word. Yeah, the brain capacity to do that. And my father himself, he never told me at not one single moment in his life or in my life what I should do. It was the opposite. He supported me in every foolish thing that I decided to do. And when it came hard to hard, he even told me, "Don't do that because you're gonna give up something that is you, right?" But I did it, and this is why we came to study medicine at all.
Okay. So, in that context, what was med school like for you? Being that this is something that you took on as kind of taking over the family business, really, is what it kinda looked
Yeah,
at.
yeah.
That's a very different approach than a lot of people that you hear that become doctors or veterinarians and so forth. So, in that context, what was the experience of medical school like for you? How did it feel? What was your experience?
I think it was a vice versa for the professors and for a certain professor and me. It was a it was a hard trail. It was a rough trail, right? I always saw it at the attitude, and in the end, I didn't want it to do nothing more than finish it as fast and as good as I can. Not to get all the approbations and to seek on with the private consultatory of my father, where my mother hangs on. She is leading that consultatory today. She is a doctor today, but she was a nurse at that time. So there was a lot of things going on there, and I had my responsibilities. And I think the only thing that kept me through this was that I always knew what I was doing it for, and that I had a great membership, and I still have it in a Northern German student fraternity, where I got to get to meet some guys that focus to make a reasonable man out of me.
And from you practice as a physician for many years in Germany,
Yeah.
um, and I know that you had been married prior. We're not going to go too deep into those things, but
No, I haven't been
eventually,
married prior. I have kids,
oh,
but I've never been married. My Mexican wife is my first wife and my only wife. I never was willing to make this compromise. I have to give her that. That's her point.
fair enough. Um, and, and so you've been in Mexico for what, 17 years? I think it is.
No, 13 years. It will be in a couple of days, actually. So in these
Wow.
days, we have arrived, and then it will be 13 years here. Yes.
So Germany to Mexico is not a move that you often hear of people doing. So how did that come about?
Well, if you want to reduce it, and it's the same that we've been talking about before, and probably we'll talk a little bit more about later. I'm a bastard with every cell of my heart, but I'm a very reliable and pretty conservative person, which means nothing other that I have some strong values. Maybe I have defined them mostly myself, or got them out of things that are not so good, but I stand with those. And one of those is that I don't get married without a reason. And when my wife, for certain reasons, begs me to go back to her home country, I would do that. Stand and fall with your decisions was always uh, it's not a strength. It's a weakness of mine because you all much get to learn in life that your decisions mostly are not correct, and if you force yourself to stand and fall with them, well, you live a lot of shit, and I did this. But in between the shit, you always find some pearls, and this is one of the pearls that I found.
Fair enough. So you did meet your wife in Germany, but then moved back with her. Okay.
No,
I,
no, no. I did meet my wife because I have been invited together with a couple of other doctors of my institution to, yeah, teach academically teach a couple of colleagues here in the in yeah. See, so, and she was an employee of the Secretary of Culture here in Mexico, and she, next to a lot of other people, was in charge to give us the cultural program after the professional job. So we are supposed to be here like 6 weeks, travel around, give a couple of official auditions, give a couple of professional on the job training, and in
mhm.
between, before or after or at the weekends or whatever, they offered us a complete cultural program, and there I got to know her. And I did return to Germany, I have to say, without that we had anything going on. It was her that she was uh, writing a personal letter to me that was so nice, so open-minded, and so sweet that I considered that this deserves a response, whatever will be. I never have received such a message, and I say, okay, whatever will be, I have to respond. That is so mind blowing. I have to go on it, and here we are.
So another way of saying it, it's all her fault.
Yeah.
so it blossomed from there. Eventually, she asked you to move to her country to be together. You obliged 13 years ago in a few days.
Yeah.
And how how difficult was it to acclimate in Mexico versus Germany? It's very different
Oh
cultures.
yeah, but that's a very good question. And again, I have to come back to my wife because before we decided to move to Mexico, she lived with me in Germany almost 4 years for obvious reasons like economical security, security at all on the streets, people follow up, and I don't know what. No, and besides, Germany is a beautiful country. It is really
Hmm.
green. It has a lot of seaside, and up from the climate, it's really nice. But for her, it was very difficult, if not impossible, as it results, to adapt her to Germany because we also have some certain habits. We are very strict. We don't have any humor, and we don't like the people. And that's the opposite. So being saying that to Mexico, being saying that for me, it was pretty easy to adapt here because people here are very open minded and they open the door. And if you don't mess around with them, you get a fair chance here. Now it's about you if you want to use it or not. But I have been in foreign countries before. I did large parts of my studies in Australia, for example, a part of my studies in Norway, and my second title, because I have two doctor titles, I did in the UK, in England, in Preston, at the Cambridge University. So I had a couple of experience. I didn't speak any Spanish, but I did had the French and the Latin, and I came over and said I will give it a go, and it worked out pretty well. People are very helpful here, and this is the opposite in Germany. Germany is a very rough society.
It is, and And we've had discussions in the past where, Germany in the 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, um, very the word I would use is overprotective of its people, because there seemed to be
Yeah, if not
justified concern.
indoctrinated, no? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it just there was concern of repeating history, and um, I think that when you have those kinds of constraints on society, doing everything you can to control the culture of thought, it makes a lot of sense to me that you would have people that are kind of stark and like you, as you say, rough. Do you think that this was a big contributing factor to that, or is it something else? 'Cause I know that Germans have always been hardworking, hard-nosed people,
Always been
but
rough.
I have to wonder, does that aspect of over half of the 20th century being the way that it was, with Berlin being split for much of that time, what influence do you think that had on culture and on your upbringing in particular?
Oh, a lot. And you can still feel it today, although the wall tumbled down 1989. And there is so many cultural divisions and differences within the Germans, and there's none from the one or from the other side that have been growing up with that, like mine, that cannot tell you a certain story, and where I would say that this story has a very deep impact on the development of your childhood and later becoming a grown up and an adult. I can say for myself, my family has been divided through the wall, and I got to know one part of my family when I was at the age of 14, and I didn't knew about them at all because this was a pain for my grandfather and for my mother in that case, because they found him lost. No, of course they tried to reach him for many years, but the wall was there and the systems were fronted up, so this was not possible to pass, to look for him, or even to write letters. Everything came back unanswered, and when the wall crumbled down and they realize that they have a chance to find their lost members after 40 years again. This is exactly what happened. But tell me if you want, if that I go a little bit more into that, because if you can imagine, there's a lot of storyline on that, just like how I got to know my Eastern communistic part of the family.
Well, what was that experience like? I would imagine that there were, even though you're all Germans, you had very different experiences.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
complete different
and
socialization for 3 generations. Don't forget that. So these people are
right.
different until today. They are.
Well, how would you describe the difference between the two?
Oh, nowadays, for example, and to mention something very positive, they are very much aware about the changings that are happening in the society right now, while the Western part is in the same lullaby for 80, 90 years almost right now. No, so they know how a dictatorship feels, and they know how hard is the change, how hard was the change after the war, and then again for them to adapt them to a complete different orientated society after the tumbling down. So they are very much more sensible to social movements, if you want to say, than the Western people like mine.
So, would you say it's a more literal conservative versus liberal kind of a thing?
Yeah,
Not
while the libertarian part is on the eastern side, to make that
right.
clear, right? So the
Okay.
eastern side has had so many bad experiences in a very short period of time that everybody literally that was born in the GDR, was it what it was called, can remember that. Everybody from old to young, all the generations that are here right now that have been born in the GDR, they remember that, or before, they remember that. and they remember how did it start and when did it all change and how did it all lead to this very much even terroristical state, if you speak against their own people, that it was in the end. It was obviously not always like this. Like always, it started with ideology, people thinking they have the solution and doing the right thing. But how did it come there? And they remember that very well. So, in the situation that is going on now, where pretty much we are confronting in a global speaking way a change of societies to I don't know what. They are very sensible for that, and within Germany nowadays, they are the seismographs for reasonable changes, and I do listen to them to say that.
Yeah, and I think it's such a unique proposition that you have that direct split. You know, a literal for many, like as you say, 3 generations
Yeah,
of two literal sides of a country, and nowhere else on Earth, with the possible exception of Korea,
Korea,
do
yeah,
you have that kind of separation that has then been reintegrated, and you now have 30 more years of seeing how that changed things, politically and climate wise. And although I didn't expect to have a geopolitical discussion with you, this is such a unique opportunity. I'm going
yeah.
to I'm going
Get
to
it
do it because
away!
this kind
Just
of
stop my mouth. You're
no.
one of the few people that can do that.
um, but what I find interesting when we talk about globalization, for example, for your Western or your Eastern brothers and sisters, I would imagine that that has probably been a very difficult thing to accept.
Yeah,
Um, because for so many years, so many generations, everything is very self-contained. Very little came from the outside.
yeah.
Um, what,
Well, they
from
have been
your
in this kind of social union, no? Up to with Cuba or Korea or China, what you see. So they kind of they are internationalists. No, they are also talking about international communism. But of course, the way that we are looking at globalism was very, very hard for them to adapt to this.
right,
And even to today, and this is another difference, you see a large group of the population over there that is not able or willing or whatever to adapt to this. And again, me myself always being kind of rebellious and stumbling into the things, uh, I can understand them very well. And I appreciate them today so that they are reporting and say, please be aware. We have heard all this before. We have seen all this before. This is not leading to a good way. They play you clips where the old members of the communistic committee are saying such and such thing. And then they play the clip how the German active politician is actively saying the same thing. No,
mm,
and you see, okay, they are far more sensibilized again for what is happening now than we that we are living in this under the same lullaby for the last century.
yeah, and that does kind of lead into some things that maybe are a little bit more frivolous. Like I've seen images of, say, a Kentucky Fried Chicken in China, and the menu is totally different, and it's like they don't even know what a Kentucky is
No,
uh, in China. Whose stupid idea was that? I don't understand. But then you have the other side of it, where there is some corporate globalization that has brought some things that are positive that we can unify. Example: Masters of the Universe, Mattel, and something that I think a lot of people were hoping we would talk about. And of course, how could we not broach this subject during this discussion? The German fan base for Motu is rabid. It's insane. And you have an entirely different set of lore because of some of the, uh, for lack of a better term, censorship that was happening at the time.
yes.
Um, can you talk us through, you
Oh,
know,
with a yeah, with a pleasure.
comments?
So
Yeah.
if we say things, if we say Motu for us, um, was inspired by two completely different things. The animated series we didn't have on screen till 1986 when the thing almost was over, if you want to say it like this. It started to get weaker in 88 it died. So it was like the end when we got at the first animation on screen. So the relationship that the Motu fan base in Germany has is not the anime, although it's very beloved. What we had are by own German distributors. We had comics and we had audiobooks more than anything else. And they have been published together with the first appearance of He-Man and Skeletor. Even they have been in a pack together. The first episode of the audiobook together with He-Man and Skeletor in one pack, and it was called get to jump into the world of Masters of the Universe, no, of the heroes. And so we got into that much more about our fantasy factor, because audiobooks, of course, they tell a story, but they more than that, they deliver a lot of atmosphere and they trigger your fantasy, no. And that was the hook that the Germans had with it. And the comics published by the IFA distributor, they are generally German, and this is the only thing that we had, and this was also the thing that brought me into want to have this pack. So if I say or if you say the different lore, uh, the lore of the audiobooks is far more complex. There's 36 episodes, each of them almost an hour long. Even we have a couple that are more than an hour long. Some of them are trilogies, even. So they take a lot more background on a lot more characters than animation filmation is doing it, right? So that is very anti-eternia, for example, is a concept that comes out of the German audiobooks and that Mattel was taking over. And it's not the only one, because also now they overtake the background stories, for example, characters like Beastman, how he became stupid, Trapjaw, how he became what he was, Keldor. This is all German lore.
So, and I would have to venture a guess that's part of why you have such an affinity for the 2000X cartoon, because it's closer to the German stuff you grew up with.
I don't know. The 2000X for me was just like when it came back into the shops, because it was widely distributed in Germany. For me and for the most of the German Motu community, it was just like a continuation, and we were all happy that we have these things on the shops again. And at least in Germany, it's sold very good, and it's very much beloved by the collectors there. So I think it's more like this. It was just like okay, and also you have to mention that when 2000X came, our generation passed past the need to be in the discotheque that urgently. So when 2000X came, I already was in the mid of my 20s, and I could say, okay, this is something very interesting for me, and I'm happy that it's there. And I bought it from a collector's point of view, and I was happy to widen up again my possibility. And by the way, I really think if we're talking about the animated series, it's the best of all that we got so far.
Love it. Eh, So, I, I love the fact that Motu is something that you're such a fan of, and that it does have such a uniquely German heritage as well. And with it being one of the few toy lines that, with very few exceptions, has spanned most every decade since its inception. Um, now we have Origins, which you and I are both huge fans of, Masterverse, which we both appreciate very much, and certainly the CGI cartoon has its audience as well. Um, do you feel that where we are is good with He-Man, or do you think that there's more potential to do something very different? And if Mattel gave you the keys to the castle,
All
so to
right.
speak, what would you do with the line as it exists now?
Oh, although it didn't appear on the first look, for me now, there's a lot of things coming together. Let's say I was so thrilled, as you say, when they came up, okay, we will do Origins, and this will be very close to the lore. So this will be as much close. Maybe we're doing it modern, but we will not change anything of your beloved characters, and this is what they're doing. And then Revelations came, then CGI came, and then Masterverse came. And first I was like, okay, what they're going to do with all that, no? Some, as well, considering that we have Imaginix license, that we have Mega Constructs license, that we have Mondo license, or whatever shit, right? So I was saying, where is this all going? But with the exception that we still not know for 100% if Mattel can keep the rights for Masters of the Universe in 2023. I would say they dropped a couple of very, very good decisions, right? Because it came all together, right? And if you think it's too much, well, just ask yourself when, in point of history, you had such a possibility to pick out of a huge Masters of the Universe offer whatever communicates the best with you. So, and if there's stuff there that you don't need, that is not talking to you, leave it out of sight. But the simple fact that I can go on a day like Monday to Walmart and I can find a Montana is so positive that whatever makes me negative, and if we will be compensated just by that, because in the end I have the choice what I'm buying and what I'm considering for me to be good in my collection or not. And if we're talking about the good decisions that I think Mattel made, is that it's all coming together right now. Now we see, okay, with Revelations and with Revolution, again, they tried to pick up the old collectors, although, in my opinion, as you know, they failed terribly. The figures are great, and we get some detailed versions of, of characters like Evelyn or Skeletor that we have never seen before in such a detail and with such a possibility of posing them or expressions. So I even can appreciate that. With CGI, with CGI, they're giving a new generation, and at least here in Latin America, it's working very, very well uh, to the masters of the universe. And yes, it's necessary. It's hard to say this, but our kids don't want to play with our toys. Did you
Right.
want to play with the toys of your mom or your dad? Seriously? No. In the back look, you might have to learn to appreciate them or not. Most of them throw them away when parents are dying. But you have your own universe as a kid today. You have your own environment that you grow up in. And that is way different to the environment that we grow up in. So I think the CGI one was the perfect move to bring that on to the next generation. And if I now get to see what they are doing with the Masterverse, and with that I will stop my. You see, I'm in flames. Now we are talking
Oh,
about my
keep
topic.
going. No,
So
keep going.
the Masterverse is fusioning that it is able to pick up a lot of older issues to for us to transform them into our future, and is able to pick up also, as they do, the CGI stuff, and I don't know what, to mm, close the circle and make it really worth the while for our old sucker bastards collectors, as well as for our kids that the stuff really is made for, to be honest, no?
Yeah, and I feel like and I've said this many times. People that are in the chat will know this saying well. You've even heard me say it. I really feel like the Masterverse is a good way of having that higher detail, higher end figure that is very similar to classics. And there's people that didn't really know about classics until it was, well a few years into its run, and felt like there was too much. It was too hard to get started. So with the Masterverse line being as readily available as it is, if you're like, what, I think Origins are great, but I don't want those. I want something a bit more realistic looking. They have that. It's easy to obtain. You don't hear the
At the
horror
same
stories of
price point.
Masterverse as much.
And this is really
Exactly.
a great decision again. So we have a reasonable price line between all these lines. The only thing that is going up a bit is Revelations, but it is obvious why. But it's not even like a hit out or anything like this, or that you say
Mm,
why they take the double for that. No, no. It's a slightly rising in the price, but for visible and obvious reasons that everybody will understand. If you just hold two figures next to them and you don't know nothing, you will see, okay, I understand why this is $5 more, right?
right.
And apart from that, they are doing it very, very intelligent, also bringing it up for a reasonable price points, where we get vehicles in such a great, just like the Roton. It's a huge, or Shark Tank. It's a huge vehicle, and we get it for a reasonable price point. We got to have Castle Grayskull for under $100. I'm sure Mattel is waiting for the great surprise now with the Eternia playset, and they're all gonna cut off our balls. But so far, this was very intelligent and a very consequent strategy, and I'm very happy because this also makes it even in Mexico. A figure here is at 299 pesos, so the same price that you have it on the table here. That's available for a Mexican father for his son. That's available.
Yeah. So it is capturing. What I love about it is that because we are integrating so much of all the different aspects of He-Man into Origins, for example, you're getting some of the 2000X stuff. You're getting all the classic 80s characters. You're getting stuff from the German lore and variations of characters. We're bringing them all together into one thing. And like I say, it's a good price point. They've only gotten better with distribution and availability for most things. Even with the Mattel Creation stuff, they've taken a big step in saying, "We hear you. We're going to make this stuff more available. We're giving you second chances on stuff." That
Yeah, and
it's a,
very
it's a
on in the
whole
origins lines, no? Well, I have
right.
to say, I really did not understand this, but this is an individual point of view. But you know that the head sculpting of He-Man, like always, was very controversial. And with the
Mhm.
second edition of the figures, Mattel had it fixed. No, now you can say, okay, they triggered variant collectors, but in the end, they were
Mhm.
just reacting to the remarks of the community, and it was not even a vast remark. There were people very loud, but not too many that were complaining about the head sculpt. But there were also people like me that said the difference are not that bad, and I really love to have as Origins has that feature to interchange hats, and as you know that I'm a modder that I figure around with this stuff, I said, okay, I just have another face expression, and I can use that. I didn't have any problems with it from the beginning, but those
Same.
people who got problems with it, they got hurt and very very fast, which means the second put out of the first line, the hat sculpt has been corrected. That is a wow, amazing to react that fast for a company that big. And you know, we have other competitors. Just Jim Lago mentioned here in the chat that are not doing this, that are going the opposite way, and they
Right.
sorry that they f you anytime you try to get hold on a thing on the one way with the price, on another way that it's not it will not be available. Can't find it.
Exactly. And it is something where, as a kid, even I didn't really much see the point of getting multiple versions of He-Man. I had one, I'm good, but as an adult collector now, especially with the fact that they have the interchangeable heads, and every time we get a new version of He-Man, there's a different expression on one of the heads that they come with. So you're getting different outfits, you're getting different facial expressions, sometimes upgraded
Different
weapons, different
action
weapons.
features. Another
Yes,
great score of Mattel, different action figures. Battle Armor He-Man is not the same as Flying Fists He-Man. And as a little boy, I got the sense, not even armor-wise, as you say, but there was a different function. And this function was not like transferable from one or the other to the other figure. So if you wanted it, you need and you saw the sense because you wanted to see. Actually, you had already when Flying Fist Seaman, which is a good example, came out in in the vintage line. It already was the third version of He-Man that was published, something that never happened before in any toy line in history. But people bought
right.
it, and me myself, because I wanted to see Flying Fist Seaman with his rotating thing there, phrasing just to the fright zone and kicking them all. I wanted to see that.
Yeah, and it's something where, again, as a collector, I like having those options now. And again, with the price point and all the value you get out of it, it doesn't bother me at all. But it gives you the option. So if you just want to have core characters and only have core characters and not do variants and all these things, all of those are still being made available. We just saw the reveal, official pre-order up for King Randor and a few other characters. And it just shows that they're looking at the entire range. They're trying to give it as much longevity as they can. And the only thing that concerns me are the rights aspect of it. Um, and the other one being, of course, there's a few points in a toy line where you have, I wouldn't call it necessarily a make or break moment, but
Oh yes, oh
with
yes,
some hardcore collectors, this Eternia offering is really going to, um, it will make the difference for some people.
oh
As
yes.
Bill is
Not
saying,
everybody, not everybody will buy it. And
mm-mm,
again, this is a if even those who want it urgently maybe not be able to afford it.
right,
But this is also a very intelligent decision to put it on Mattel Creations in this case because it's not entering the white market. What they are entering the white market is price worthy, and they don't break it, right? And I appreciate this because this is still promising us that we will get a Snake Mountain. We already know we will get a Talent Fighter. We will get a so a Point Dread probably and stuff like this. And this will all appear in the normal or Origins line. And if you mention the point of make it or break it, I think 2022 was exactly this year. And with the new things that are advised already, that we already know about, even including the movie features that are going to push right now, we
hmm
know that 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 it worked because if it would have been only the collectors in the first 2 years that would have buying this line, they wouldn't do all this. It's not valuable to. I'm the one. I'm talking about myself. I don't want to disgrace you, no. But sorry, we are 1%, no more, right? So if this wouldn't have had appeared to a wider range of people, we wouldn't see all the efforts, all the lines, and all the
right.
new figures or what. So I think the point of no return, we kind of passed it over, and I'm very very thrilled and happy about this because this means I probably will see a complete line of Masters of the Universe figures, and even as they start with Sunman or with other characters like Kronos that or King Randor now, that they bring in characters that we haven't had like this or we never had, but that they are connected to the lore in some reasonable way. I love it, and for a reasonable price because yeah, Super Seven, nice, super nice, super nice, super nice, but expensive.
And it way too expensive for what it is, in my opinion. That's a
It
whole
is.
other
It
ball of
is.
wax. And
It is.
but
But I
ultimately,
simply cannot afford it. But I want to have
Right.
this diorama there. I want to have this feeling. This is what keeps me like mentally healthy. And you better believe it's a cheaper investment for my family and for the society to keep me quite happy with some motor figures than to let me get out and tell the people what I really think.
I mean, I've heard some of what you really think, and I tend to agree. So, um, you know, and that's something that you've really kind of centered. Like the name of your channel is Masters Maniac Mexico, so it's. I think it's appropriate that we focus on that a little bit. So thank you for indulging me. Um, and you've been working with customs and doing bootleg toys as we've gone into great detail with in the past. Um, you did pick up the Never Ending Story license. Um,
Yes. And before I'm going to tell you about that, just give me 2 minutes, my friend.
sure.
I cannot hold it back. I go running and I'll
All
be
right.
on screen in just a couple of minutes again. You're a
All right.
great entertainer. I'm pretty sure that you can do that. No? Oh,
Absolutely.
okay.
So I'm going to take a moment here to catch up with chat. Glad to see you all talk amongst yourselves. Bill, I definitely want a Point Dread and a Talon Fighter, and my biggest wish with that is that the canopy is a bit more robust than we got in the original toy, and also that the wingspan is a little bit longer. Those are my two big wants. Um, Gotatron's dead on with the Grizzlor, and I can't wait for next Friday. I'm hoping to get one of the already made ones, just be able to secure it, obviously. But I'm also very curious about the made to order aspect, and of course, I'll report on it and the experience as it goes on. Jim Largo asks, if you rub Grizzlor under the carpet, can you use him to create a static electricity shock? Probably not, because you'd be holding him and you would be grounded. I would be willing to bet that that would not work, but it's worth trying. It's worth trying. Will says, I don't have any modern Motu, but I did find a box of some of my childhood action figures in it last night. Hordak, Buzzoff, Moss Man, pieces of Modulok, and a baggie of accessories. That's awesome. Send pictures. Send pictures. I'd love to see it. And I also see that Nolan and many others have arrived. Thank you for being here. And we're at a point, we're getting close to an hour, so I do want to really encourage you to ask any questions you have of Rollo about any subject at all. He's made it very clear nothing is off limits, and and that he just wants to be as open as possible. So I do ask that you be free, feel free with all the questions. We want to give this opportunity to you guys to talk about that stuff. When he comes back, he is going to talk a bit about Never Ending Story a little bit. Um, but beyond that, if you have questions, please bring it up. Um, I did see that, and Rollo had mentioned it, that the Masterverse pre-orders went up for, not the pre-orders, but they revealed this Motu Tuesday for a live-action movie, He-Man and Skeletor. The He-Man's kind of a miss for me because it doesn't really look like Dolph Lundgren, but the Skeletor looks amazing. So, um, if you're into Frank Langella's portrayal of Skeletor and you want one, he's going to be at a Masterverse price point, and the sculpt is so good. Check it out if you're into it. Keith Knight's here too, just hasn't commented yet. Well, welcome, welcome. And people are asking if the moss man that Will found smells like pine sol. Oh, you probably. So, uh, thank you, Barely. She says I'm a good talk master. I appreciate that. So, as we were saying before, and welcome back, Rollo. You had acquired the Never-Ending Storyline, and as most people know, that is a German original thing. The book and the film were in Germany, and then they saw a wider release, which is not very common at that time. German literature or film going
No.
mass market, so it's a very
I think I
special
was
thing
the
for
first
that
one.
alone.
I think I was the first one. And he did things. He brought out people like Roland Emmerich, with his first production, Moon 44,
Mhm.
first science fiction production ever on German ground. and won an Oscar straight away.
Absolutely. So, with that said, was that part of the driving force behind getting the rights to make a toy line based upon the property, or what led you to do that?
Jesus, how
What
much
made you
time do
decide
you
to do
have? How much time do you have, and how much nerves do you have to listen to that never-ending story? So
that?
this is part of my, let's say, heritage. You know that I'm working here with a couple of very talented artists and toy producers in Mexico. And I during the years I had the chance to bring a couple of toys to only genuinely to the Mexican market, what you would call Mexican bootleg. Most of you have seen pieces of the work, of my work, of Marcus' work, or whatever. So this is where we are. And especially talking about Marcus, this is a guy with so much talent that I was looking for him, and as always, the artists don't have that drive, that I was looking for him for an opportunity to seek on with all the successes that we had in the last year, and with a small success in Europe last winter, to seek on with something international and something that he's making for him, with him, and with his own hands, and not only being a loan paid designer, no, just like Kirby or whoever. No, you pay him off and then it's gone, right? So I wanted that, and then I thought about the possibilities. I don't want to pose, but I have quite of a knowledge of the 80s things that were going on, and I love the movie. It is a part of my grown up, becoming an adult, getting off subject for sure. I was in love with the princess. Jab- no, and the first time in love that you feel it in other parts than in your heart. So it was like it is a part of my personal lore, and I said, okay, I knew as a collector that there has never been figures done apart from a very small line in Brazil, which also was licensed, but only appeared in Brazil and was very poorly made. So I decided to hook on to that, and as a German, I just was writing to the production company. Mr. Eichinger himself, a couple of years died, but obviously the heritage is under control. And they say that's a great idea. Go forward. For the first wave, we don't want any interest, and later on, you're gonna pay us some royalties so that you can calculate it with this. But they really made it easy, and so I went and obtained the license. That's pretty
Awesome.
much it.
And that's wonderful. I mean, and obviously I know that. I want to make sure that they understood the breadth of it. And the
Yeah, but
only other
what
news
they
we have,
don't know, oh, you
and
should
they
never
won't
give a
know.
penalty kick to the people, huh?
Right.
What the people don't know here is that the problem here is, again, Marcus is very great with all his, and our producer, his name is Sergio, is also very great with far more than 20 years of experience in toy production, and they are both willing to go where no one has gone boldly before. Let's say it like this, but don't let close the eyes. I will not be there forever, and maybe I will be there longer as I'm able to interact or act or be very productive in the name of this project. So you have to mention at this point that the main person that is in charge for the Resurrection toy line now is our Jim here, and it's not me anymore. And I'm very happy about this because this turns it to a never-ending story, no matter what's going to happen to me and when.
Well, since he let it slip, folks, here's an exclusive. We're not going to be making any press releases or official announcements beyond this, but we have formally formed a toy company. It is called Resurrection Toys, and our first full toy line will be Never Ending Story. But there's going to be some things coming relatively shortly before the end of the year. Different kinds of things that we'll make available to you, but I have nothing more to share on that front. Websites
Maybe one
registered.
thing. Maybe one thing, Jim. Burley says she
Mm,
cannot wait for that never-ending story figures. And if you want, but as you are the official director, and this is the way we're talking privately under all the participants as well. So there is, of course, it's your decision, but you know that you have kind of a little feature, a little gif about the progress on Falcor. And if you want, and if there's the time, from my point of view, you can show it.
Well, not ready to yet. I'm because the stuff that I would want to show the most is not yet finished. So I'm not going to share any more of it until it's finished. So what I will say is that when I came on board, when you gave me the idea that, hey, I want you to take this over, I said okay. And in our initial discussions, it really came down to, you're in charge, so what do you want to see? Initially, these toys were just meant to be non-articulated paired pieces that would be good for display with high quality, which by itself, wonderful. However, if it was something that we had decided, which we did, we wanted an international release, we wanted to up our game a little bit, so to speak. So I started asking hard questions like, can we do articulation? What are we looking at for packaging? So we're getting very ambitious in the context of what these Mexican creators are used to at this level. So I basically said, I might as well have told him, "Hey, cut the thing apart and see what you can make work." And give me articulation. And I started getting really deep into it, where to the point where Falcor's jaw is articulated, his tongue is articulated. He's got several points of articulation on the rest of his body. Still somewhat basic, but it gives so much more play value to what we're doing. And because of that, we had previously said, "Oh, these will be ready by the end of the year." Nope, they're not going to be ready by the end of the year because we're not going to release a product that's not up to the standard that we've all agreed these should be at. Now, with that said, the 40th anniversary dates. There's multiple release dates in Europe and the States. Um, that is not until 2024. So, what you can expect is the toys will start to come out sometime next year, leading up to the full anniversary, so that we can at least get a wave or two, maybe even three waves before the last anniversary. That is
That's
the
the
hope.
idea, to have
That's what we're hoping for.
three waves ready before we start publishing.
Exactly. But because of that, this first set of Falcor and Atreyu, I'm really pushing Marcos very hard with this to get as far as we can with this to establish a baseline of how we want these to work, so that as he sculpts the next two sets, he knows what I'm going to want, and it's going to take him less time. And the more he does, the better he will get at it, the faster it will come, hopefully. Um, I'm not going to compromise on the quality here. Uh, I will ask that you not expect these to be of like an SH figure arts quality. We're not going for that. We're going for an 80s nostalgia vibe with some technological advances that are available to us. So I ask for your patience. I will share progress as I'm comfortable with it. Um, but just know that we're so happy that everyone has so much interest. We are going to be um, engaging the community a lot, because this is meant to be a collaborative effort between us and the community to make sure we're getting as much as we can out of it. Patrons always get the first say. So if you want to be a part of the toy line, you might want to pop over to my Patreon and dunk a couple bucks in. Because during our hangouts, when I have progress to share, that's when I do it the most. So
And that
I
being
do
said,
have
progress want to be seen. Everything that will happen on Gright and Jim's page, not on my page or any other page, till we come to a point where we have official pages for the toy line. But if you want to have news, this is the guy you talk to, and don't even try to walk in the back door, because I'm the bouncer there, and I won't answer neither.
Yes,
I
and
won't
and and that
answer
and
that.
that brings up a good
We
point.
have we have Wilhelm here. Sorry, my friend, but we have Wilhelm
I,
here that
I've got a
says,
couple questions I'm going to bring up. I see the question. I'm bringing it up in a second. I promise. I promise. I promise. I promise.
all right, okay.
But I do want to say that we are going to have an official YouTube channel for the company. Um, Basically, I'm waiting for our branding to be finished. Rollo's hard at work on that, and once I have all that, then I can create all kinds of stuff, and we'll make it work. So just I ask that you be patient with that too, but I will let you know here when we have them. So a couple questions from chat, so I don't want to get too far along, and we will come to Will's straight away. Bjorn asked if there were any franchises that were bigger in Mexico or Germany than they were in the US that are of note to you.
Very reasonable question, and the answer is yes. Especially if we're talking about Germany. Of course, the majority of my life I have been spending there. There's a couple of toy lines that didn't even took off in the United States and were very, very popular in Germany. In Mexico, it's also an issue, and if you want to mention the most popular one, it would be the Aliens toy line. The Aliens toy line was taken out of the markets in Europe as well as in the United States very fast. But here was an ongoing seller, and it's very popular, which you see in many many bootlegs, as you know, my dear friend. If it comes to Germany, it would be worthwhile to make another extra or something that I could publish on my channel if I find the forces to do so, because this is a wide range. There's also some specifics from England that never took down in the United States so much, and some specific German toy lines like Playmobil that never took off, but now are kind of taking space, but only in the collectors range, not with the kids.
Right.
And yeah, there's so this is a wide range, but I hope I could answer that question.
Yeah, and I think a video on your channel that goes through some of that would be great. If you need any help because you lack energy, let me know. I'll happily edit it. If you just film it, I can edit it for you and we'll put it up.
I did so.
Um,
This is it. Your help already in points of bringing my computer up to date a little bit and making resolving the light problems and anything like this. And
yeah,
being said that, I am willing to go back to YouTube and talk to you directly, as I will stay here at least till the 30th of September. And for me, it's a kind of you know how much revitalizing it always works for me when we talk, and it's the same with this type of interaction that I have with my whole community. So I want to come back just for myself as long as I can and wherever I can. I will not put up a play plan anyway. The channel is not for gaining 10 million subscribers or anything. It's just that I want to be connected with you, and for the same reason, I will be back with
absolutely.
what I can. With what I can.
Awesome. Another question from chat. Jim Largo asked if there will be file cards on the package for Neverending Story figures. I think that's a great idea because, of course, on the back of the box, you would have um, some description of the characters that are in there. But I love the idea of having something you can cut out. But what I will also say is that we're working on making the packaging something that you're going to use for diorama purposes. I don't want it to simply be the insert, be the diorama. I want the whole box to work that way. But with that said, you'll have to cut some of it to make that work. So what we could probably do is have a file card situation, one of the flaps, or because if there are two packs, the two flaps that open, that might work. And
Yeah.
we're very and that but that design phase is very much in its infancy. So I will definitely take that on board and see what we can do.
So there's two aspects you have to take into consideration, people, that we are dealing with. First of all, is that we don't want to have any pre-financing. We don't want any uh, what are these internet pages are called support me,
Kickstarter,
yeah,
Indiegogo,
Kickstarter
we're
or
not doing anything like
whatever.
that.
We don't
None
want
of
that.
that.
So we want to deliver you a complete ready product, and this is an issue. So we cannot. Obviously, none of us is a millionaire, and we cannot put up just like a couple of million in pre-production. That's one thing. Our professional attitude we already have mentioned. So what we're going to do, and that includes the packaging, will be nice from the point of view of two collectors that love what they do. And if I've seen some comments here, no, we got the keys to the seven paradises here. We got the keys to Willy Wonka's chocolate fabricy, only that it's putting out toys. So we want to do it very, very right. And as I know and understood, Jim, that is his aim. And the third thing is price. We are not going to kick out anything like $50 or anything like this, but we want
Mhm.
to have it just like we spoke about the origins factor. We want to have it price worthy and available for everybody that would love to have a piece. So this also kind of limits us, although Jim is completely right. The possibility to do so we have. And if things are progressing, we would be willing, and that's the good about this thing here. You're not talking to any officials. You talk to people that love what they do and that love collecting and that they're in the things that they are doing. Otherwise, they don't do it. That's the way we concede the license. So you're very welcome with mentions like this, and we always hope and will try to reach your expectations. And if it's possible and reasonable, we always will do it.
And that certainly goes into the Will's question with regards to having the book that make it look like the book, or the box looking like the book. I can certainly see some aspects of design where that would work. I know what I have in my head as far as the box design, um, but what I think would be plausible, okay, we are going to have an Orin on every package printed on there. That's the logo for the brand. So you will have that, and I don't see any reason that the background shouldn't look like the binding of a book. That's a very reasonable request. It's a design choice was already on my mind. So we'll certainly do that moving forward. And for crying
Yeah.
out loud, the first character set is going to come with a life-size Orin that you can wear. So we've got you covered in many, many ways. In many, many ways.
We try our
And
best. I
Margo,
know, but it is very welcome. Again, if you have some more, if you have some critics, please shout it out because we cannot get better if we're running the wrong way and we don't see it. So this is if you have some serious stuff, always don't hesitate not a second to let us know this might be a problem or this might be upsetting for many people. But in the other way, uh, suggestions just like this card. Uh, a product always can be measured up. And again, if there's positive critics here and even suggestions for develop a thing, um, I can speak for Marcus and a little bit for you as well. For me, in all the times, it is more than welcome, and we will try to implement it at the level that we are able to. No, and at the level that we see this will be refinancing itself. It will work. We can sell off sufficient pieces to give an add-on or a special edition, and people would be interested in it.
hmm
But the
yeah,
possibility to do some holographic cards or anything like this and some personality files is there.
sure. Not to mention the fact that, and we've discussed this in the past. The first wave we're going to be very conservative with because we don't want to overextend ourselves. Um, I don't want anyone to regard this as like limited edition because if people are hesitant to purchase it that aren't aware of this within our community, I can understand that. But then when they see it successful and then wave two, we make more than we did on the first wave. I have absolutely no problem repressing the first wave pretty quickly if it's something that there's more interest for. It's very easy to do. It won't cost us very much. And We'll be able to use assets we already have, and maybe we'll do some extra things on those to make it special for people. But I don't want to exploit that idea, in as much I'm not going to create something that's so different that it would be considered a variant. We're not going to get into that stuff. We want to give you the right figure the first time and make it a good experience. Speaking of things that are good experiences, the answer to your question, Jim, is absolutely not. It's in our charter that that will never, ever happen
To
at all.
disappoint Bjorn army as well, there will be no majestic flower tiger.
No. Now, Rollo and I were talking about this just Monday night. He said he's working on a custom dreadnought cut for his Zartan figure. He wants to know if you have any reference for the placement of patches on the vest.
Yes, of course. So, well, being touching this part of the site, you see me sitting in my cut here. I revitalized it just to declare war to cancer and to seek on, just like an attitude decision. But I have been an active member of a very, very certain motorcycle club 27 years of my life. So everything what you see here is symbolism. And there's nothing that is on the wrong place or doesn't have any attitude. So, of course, if you want to refer to things like this or to the placement of a top or a bottom or a centerpiece, a top rocker, bottom rocker, or a centerpiece, or what is with the side pieces, where, why, and which. It would be a pleasure, Jim, to give you some ideas about it. And if you still need some parches, well, let me know because we are also we are doing this as well. It's part of our
Absolutely.
production capacity that we have here in Germany. In Germany, I say in Mexico, and we would love to use that. So if there's any part that you want, and within a very short time, there will be also an offer from our side, talking classical characters, comics, and toy lines, starting, of course, with Masters of the Universe. But also there, please let us know what you would like to see, what you would like to have, and we work it out. Even the graphic design uh, would be no problem. And you don't
There you
wait
go.
6 weeks, and you don't pay the harsh prices that they ask for in Malaysia in the meantime.
Exactly. We strive to have quick turnaround, decent prices, good customer support, and direct lines of communication. Um, Depending upon who our distributing vendor ends up being, um, if I have my way, what I would like to see happen is that when whatever distributors we have order product from us for shipping, the pre-orders will go up on their site at that moment. As soon as we have money in hand and the production is starting, they can put pre-orders up, and we will not allow them to have a pre-order window that is longer than the time it'll take for it to get to them. So it might take a couple weeks for them to get, a large container shipping. That's as long as the pre-order window is going to be. We're not doing this thing where we announce a toy and put it up for pre-order a year in advance. We're not doing that. So we'll announce final pieces when they're in production already. All the signatures have been signed. We already know where they're going to be. You're going to get all that information at one time. We're not going to be doing stuff like Hasbro does, and even to a certain degree that Mattel does. So don't um, don't worry too much about that. Barely says about Never-Ending Story. I've always loved the super cute facial expressions of Falcor. I'm so excited how it's transferred onto the figure. He looks his sculpt. It's very whimsical. It's very happy. There are some things that we're experimenting with to try and we can't do alternate heads at this stage. We don't have the means at this point. Um, but we are trying to make the head that's there as posable as possible. So we might have some surprises for you, but it's still a work in progress. We're working on the mechanics of it. We'll get as much out of that face as we possibly can, though. Okay.
So,
Will
but
says,
talking about hats, there is one thing that we can do, and if if I stop talking, I've never said it. But there's one thing that we can do, and it would be a pleasure to do so. Get your Dolph Lundgren, Masters of the Universe, and we get you the proper head.
There you go. So you heard it here first. So if you guys do want a Masterverse, film Dolph Lundgren, if that head
Dolph
sculpt ends
Lundgren.
up looking like a bag of smashed assholes, don't worry. We'll take care of it. We'll get you a head that'll work. We'll make that happen. And Will is joking, but he says, "Can you please add a series of unlocks for reaching certain sales goals? For example, enough people pre-order, you can unlock a never-ending story keychain, lunchbox, T-shirt. The potential is endless." Yeah, we're not doing that either.
Dankeschön,
Um,
Wilhelm. Yes, vielen Dank. Danke, danke, danke.
Yeah, we're not, we're not doing that. But um, there is a possibility of doing some other merchandise that'll be for sale. I'm not 100% on where I want to go with that yet. I don't want to go in too many directions at this point. But come like springtime when we're gearing up to start doing all the official talks and things like that, we'll double check our license, see what's available to us, and if people have interest, we can certainly look into some of those types of things if you want them. I know I want a never-ending story T-shirt, so it would be fun to do, but that's a let me get wave one done first.
Yeah,
I'll
well,
get that done first.
On the t-shirt front, anyway, we have some good news because on our business meeting on Monday, Jim and I we already agreed that we will in a very short time publish a t-shirt printing from a very special Motu oil on canvas painting
Mhm.
where we got our hands on, and this will be kind of the first things. We also try we will bring up some smaller things like patches, some figures, some action figures already that are
Right.
produced. We will bring on stuff like this, also in the sense to finance our artists at the end. In
Yes.
the end, it's going to keep that working. Right now, everybody from the producer to the director that we have here with Jim, down to the artists, everybody is pulling on one strangle, so everybody is just in the same direction, and it's not too much about money, but there are material necessities in the production
Right.
process that have to be financed, and we're looking again with ready-made products to back up that a little, to pimp it up a little, and to support it.
Yes, and to keep that as simple as possible, we'll be looking at some aggregate sites like Etsy and places like that to sell the ready-made stuff, just because it'll be easier for us to manage, and it's something in a place where you know and you can trust. So don't worry, when they're ready, I will be advertising the hell out of them on every show, so you'll be able to get it. Ben is
Let
asking
us
how
know
easy
what you want. Let us know what you want.
exactly. Rollo had mentioned getting the license earlier in the stream. From what I understand, to answer this question, he asked, they said they were interested and they're pretty open with it. They haven't really placed any restrictions on anything at this point. It's an international license to do the toys, and it's a good relationship. Um, but some, if it's like the old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. He had the idea, you asked, they said yes,
Yes, it was not
right?
difficult at all. And maybe the most difficult part was approaching them, but I'm not a person like that. I mean, what is the worst thing that they can tell me? They can tell me go fuck the hell. Option is number two, okay, we can talk about it. Where is your 5 billions? Or they can react like they did react. And you have to see a couple of things that played into our cards here. First thing mentioned, there have never been made a toy line about this movie or any of the parts of the movie in any wide range. The only thing that ever existed was a very short and very limited and very poorly made toy line in Brazil. That was all. So it is an aspect that is not already, there's no competition in it. Then we are talking about international rights. This movie will have its 40th anniversary. So, and nobody never renewed any licenses apart from the movie licenses itself. So that what they're there on their own are only willing to bring up a DVD box. And that's the only thing that they have the rights and the possibilities for. Everything else is already, for general righteous reason, public domain. And we were the first that were asking for this. And when I explained, okay, we will put it up all, we will lay it in front of you. You will give us your confirmation on the figures and anything like this. They were very open and said, go ahead. And if it's a success, well, with the second wave or with any reproduction of former waves, you will have to pay a royalty. But they see it as an additional possibility that hasn't even been thought about. And if you think, and maybe I'm talking too much because this is also things that we are falling to up, but it's interesting for you to know that this is the only property that's just laying around and it's waiting to get dig out, you're farly wrong. And if you have a little bit of an idea of comic or animated history story or action figure story, you will find a couple of raw diamonds that nobody today is owning any rights to them, or where it's just a matter of to put into connection with former right owners or look it up what is the status, and you can make things like this run. So in consequence, I just want to motivate you to jump over your own shadow, and if you really have a great idea that you think that is unique, approach these people. More than a no you cannot get. That is give it a try. And as I say, if you do your research on certain things like we did obviously on the never ending story thing, so these were facts that I knew when I came onto them. So if you are very well researched on what you're doing, you probably will find more open doors than you think.
And that's really kind of how it goes, and that's our philosophy moving forward. The idea of behind Resurrection Toys is very simple. We want there to be this constant chance of living again. Rollo has said on multiple occasions that he kind of came back to life when we started talking about all of these things. And, he won't be here forever. I won't be here forever, but we will live on with the legacy of what we're making with these toys. And we're also resurrecting these licenses and these ideas and these imaginations from these things. So that's really where the name comes from, and it's our philosophy at the core of the company. Anonymous dude, appreciate that. He says very smart strategy with the 40th anniversary coming up. Fortune favors the brave. It does. And appreciate that feedback, Ben. Love you to death, pal. Barely says thinking about when it'll be 40 anniversary of is 2024. Yep, that's 100% true. I do not think we're ever going to end up with the Megaforce license. It was a Mattel license to begin with, and they scrapped it. They actually helped design the costumes for the film, and unless they let those lapse, those licenses, which they may not have, but as we've seen in the past, I don't, I
Yeah,
don't
but
get your
that's
hope.
that's a very interesting point, maybe to mention another speciality that we might have that can differentiate it from many others. So if an individual, and let's say it like this, let's put it like this: if an individual like our great friend Jim Lago here is do wants to see something like that to be realized in an individual process, or if you want to see yourself as He-Man or Skeletor or Ram-Man or many faces or whatever, um, Resurrection Toys has individual abilities. This is of course for the license problems that have been mentioned by Jim right now. This is nothing that can be put on widespread. But we all know that modding and individual works also in licensing is tolerated up to a certain level. So if you want to see something individually as a person that it happens, well, we would be glad to help you to make it happen. whatever it is.
Yeah, there's certainly some things that can be done, and we have that advantage. We have um, very nimble, very flexible means of producing things. So I'm not saying that
Everything is
500.
manufactured, no? I mean, we're working with mold injection machines for the final process, but everything else is manufactured. And so,
Mm,
if there's not like a long line of machines that are set up and that are depending on a certain program, and if it runs, it runs. But you have a lot of possibilities to intervene, and
absolutely,
we invite you for that at any
you bet. So with that said, I really appreciate your time, brother. It's always good to talk to you, but to talk to you in this forum was I felt really special. So stick around for me if you would. But chat, thank you so much for your great questions, all of your great feedback, and showing up. We had a great time, and we will see you very soon with future videos and live streams coming up. So I hope you have a great rest of your week and take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.
time. Bye, you guys.